All right, we are live, and this is the Live with Sondra show. I'm your host, Sondra Shannon, CEO of Gatemaster Technology, and the Live with Sondra host, as I said. I don't know why I'm repeating that again, but it's pretty fun to say sometimes. Sometimes I still can't believe that I'm here right now, and we're on close to 70 shows. I think my guest today is somewhere around 40. We'll have to ask her. I think they get told where they are. So, I am really excited about today's show because we have a lot of parks getting ready to open for the season. And while I actually was just with a mentor of mine who said, there's no such thing as a seasonal business, like business is all the time, right? But in this industry, we do have the unique challenge that we are shut down for certain times of the year. Some of our parks, we do have some year-round parks out there that are listening to the show or year-round attractions that don't have that. But I know there's quite a lot of you out there that are getting ready for this next season and looking at the things that you can do to improve the experiences, the hospitality, and maybe even the food and beverage portion and departments of your attraction. So today we're going to be talking about, and our session title is Savor the Story, Food and Beverage That Shapes the Guest's Journey. I've got a really special guest on the show today. I think you are going to love. I know you're going to love, because when you hear this bio and all that this person has accomplished, you're going to want to hear what she has to say about food and beverage. And I'm sure you're going to take home some gems today that are going to help you do better at what you do in your attraction, because we are here to help serve and share information and make sure that you have all the tools that you need to create the best possible guest experience. And food and beverage is a huge part of that experience for most of us. I don't know about you guys, but that's probably one of my favorite parts, is the food. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sarah Bisacca. She is a freelance writer and editor with over 10 years of experience in travel, food, and hospitality. She's published her work in outlets like Forbes Travel Guide, Eatery Atlanta, and Tasting Table. She's a former marketing copywriter for Dollywood Parks and Resorts and the Harlem Globetrotters. How awesome is that? She's visited every Disney theme park worldwide, specializing in guest experience storytelling. And as always, we ask our guests what they can't live without. She says she cannot live without her dogs, Savannah and Ollie, her work from home companions. I love that. As you guys have to know, I'm a dog person. So I'm very excited to introduce you to somebody else who loves both this industry and her pets. Let me welcome to the show, Sarah Bisacca.
Hello, Sondra. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm doing well. My work from home companions are trying to be silent. If you do hear them, I apologize, but it's the world that we live in.
Hey, I got quite a few at home myself. I don't know if I've ever said on this show here, but I volunteered for an animal rescue for over 10 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had a lot of feral fosters for quite a number of years. Most of them have passed away now, but we just adopted another one in December. So
Oh,
I
my
I
gosh.
hadn't had a puppy in a long time. I didn't know that I could actually get tantrums from an animal, but I've got one right now. Not only throws tantrums, but he actually gets mad at me. Last night, he went around the corner to hide from me, and I kid you not, he started creeping up just enough so I could see him roll his eyes at me.
He needs you to know that he's upset.
Yeah, he did, and and he's a German Shepherd, so he's very smart, right? A German
Mhm.
Shepherd mix. He's very, very smart, but I certainly understand what you say when you mean you can't live without your pets and your dogs. You just have the two dogs.
2 dogs and my husband. I forgot to mention him in there, but he works from an office, so they're my work from home buddies.
There
He's
you work from.
my
I
life and
totally
travel
get it.
buddy.
I totally get it. I had one pass away Thanksgiving, and she was my kitchen buddy because I still love cooking for my family. And I got so lonely in the kitchen. I told my husband, I'm like, we got to get another one, like fast, because it's lonely in here in the
Yeah.
kitchen. So I totally get it. They're your buddies. Well, Sarah, I'm so excited to talk to you about your experience in the industry and all that you've done. I know that I gave a brief introduction to you. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? Did we miss anything? Is there anything you want to
I
say to
don't
the
think
audience
so.
about who you are? Because I know you are incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we hit the highlights. But in addition to kind of traveling and loving theme parks, I've spent a lot of time traveling post-COVID. Just we live in this world where, we've kind of come to the conclusion that we can't keep putting things off anymore. So I actually just got back from Asia for the third time, which was incredible. I've been to Japan, China, Taiwan, Vietnam. I'm going to be going to Italy with my parents, taking them for the first time. Being able to share that experience is amazing. And I use all of that experience to just inform my writing, to inform what I share with people about how they can travel better, travel smarter. And that does translate to theme parks. Hospitality is a global language, and theme parks are not just for fun. They are for making memories, just like traveling anywhere else in the world is. And food's a huge part of that. If we want to jump right into the conversation, let's go.
I love that. No, and I love what you're saying, because I often say on this show, but also in my personal belief being in hospitality for my entire adult life, is what we're doing is providing a future to look forward to and the memories we all look back on. So what you're saying resonates so much with me, because not only have I traveled most of my adult life and I see the value of that. My daughter just got back from a trip in the Mediterranean. She went to 5 countries. So what you're saying really resonates with me, because it shapes our worldview, but it also is like so important to have these experiences to look back on. And what we're going to talk about today with food and beverage and hospitality, I think can make or break those experiences for guests.
Absolutely. I mean, especially now having gone to all the parks throughout the world, being able to compare those experiences, you can kind of see where some of the holes are, unfortunately, in the domestic parks more so than the international parks. And, on the one hand, in Disney specifically, it makes me a little sad that we don't have as much of a focus on the hospitality aspect here, but it kind of gives me hope, because as we're talking to younger generations who are moving into the industry, they're going to take that with them, and they're going to remember the things that weren't great and want to fix those things moving forward.
Yes. Yes. Well, I know you've traveled the world visiting every Disney park. How did food help shape each of those experiences? Let's just start there, because I know what you mentioned, I think piggybacks on that question really well.
Absolutely. So when I travel, I love to eat. I'm traveling to eat. When I go somewhere with my husband, I have a list of foods that I want to try, and if possible, a list of places where I can try those things. And the first thing we do when we go to a new city is do a food tour, because I want to get the locals' opinion on what is good, what is delicious. And more often than not, I end up finding little gems that other bloggers haven't written about. And I feel like it's kind of the same way with theme parks, in that food is the lowest barrier to entry to understanding a new culture, in the same way that fun is a low barrier to entry. Like, what do you do for fun? And, a lot of us go to theme parks, go places with our family that, your parents went with their parents. They're going to take you to bring you that experience. And food is a continuation of that. You can learn a lot from someone about through their food preferences. What is nostalgic for them? What did you grow up eating? That teaches you a lot about someone, even if you don't speak the same language. So when you go to a theme park that has an intentional approach to food, that can make or break your experience. And it can introduce you to something that can be brand new and make it less scary. It can become nostalgic.
Yeah.
And just kind of branch off that a little bit. Speaking about Disney specifically, the whole park is designed around eating with your eyes, right? The whole park is themed. And that's true of other parks too, of Universal, even like Dollywood and Knott's Berry Farm. Like, there's theming, like you're supposed to be transported somewhere. And food is such an easy continuation of that. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just what fits. Does it make sense? Great. Let's make it great.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love it for a couple of reasons. One, because I just think it's interesting that we had this. My daughter and I had this conversation yesterday. I hope you get to meet her. She works with me, and a lot of the industry knows her because she's been coming to events since she was a kid. But yesterday, I was eating some pineapple. It was like I found this chocolate covered pineapple, like dried pineapple. I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, you want some?" She says, "The only pineapple I eat is the Dole pineapple whips at Disneyland." Okay. But it's just to your point, these are the things that people are talking about when they're not even at the parks. She
Right.
actually said that to me, but also, kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, when you look at like the drinks that they have in what is it, Hollywood Studios, when you
Mhm.
go to um, the Star Wars
Mhm.
area of the park that is Star Wars themed. I mean, it's just amazing to me how much, like you said, the food gives you this feeling that you are there, that you're eating something out of this world, right? The drinks. I can't remember what the milk drinks are called. You know what I'm talking about?
Blue milk and green milk.
Blue milk and green
That's
milk.
all it's called.
I had it, but you know what I mean? We've every time I go over there, and I just really love, to your point, what you're saying about how it takes you into the experience. It's a huge part of the experience. People are expecting this to be part of the experience, especially when attending parks. But you also mentioned food tours. I just have to do a quick shout out and plug because we are doing our GT Summit, our first in-person GT Summit here in Denver, Colorado. And the first thing we're going to do is take our VIPs on a food tour, because
Good idea.
because a couple of things, and this is kind of something I want to talk to you about, because I think we fail to mention sometimes in this industry that food is also something we do to bond with each other. It's a part of conversation. It's something that we do in business. We sit down and we have dinner. It's something that we do as families. I mean, food is such a huge part of, and I hope that's the right description, but the bonding that we have with other people. And I know that that also allows us to imprint experiences based on the food that we have. So, I hope that resonates with you too, what I'm saying, because I love this conversation about food. I'm also a foodie. In your view, though, what separates an authentic food experiences from just a cash grab concept in an attraction?
I think it really just comes down to intentionality. Like, why is that food here and what is its purpose? If you're just checking a box to feed people, people notice that.
Yeah.
If you make the effort to, even just with the naming of the food, if it fits into the theme of the land, if it keeps you in that bubble, that nostalgic bubble, then it's doing its job. If you're just, here's a stand with some hot dogs and some hamburgers, you know, that's not really doing it for a lot of people. But to really dig into the culture, dig into where you are, and bringing that whole experience full circle makes a huge difference. For example, my husband and I went to Shanghai Disney. At all the Disney parks around the world, there's a lot of Western options. Like, they typically will have like hot dogs and things, because for the people who live there, that's different and unique, and that transports them to the Disney that they think of. But for us, when we went to Shanghai Disney, there was a cafeteria area that served xiaolongbao, which are little, soup dumplings that are from Shanghai. And we got those because we wanted to try them, and they were delicious. And it made sense. It was just like the little cafeteria area, but we got to get a taste of Shanghai in Shanghai, even though we were at a Disney park. So it was just really nice to have that blend of, Western and local that still kind of kept us in the bubble.
Right.
And it's just so important. It's such a tiny detail that really can make or break that little experience.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the attractions that might be listening that are not Disney's or these big brands have a lot to learn about food with regards to these experiences, right? Because so many of them, you just go get a hamburger, but you're right. It could be as simple as naming it something cool, themed,
Right.
to change that experience. It's something very simple that someone can do to create a better experience for the guests. But what I like about what you said too, I mean, one of my other favorite things to eat at Disneyland, I'm from Southern California, so grew up going to Disneyland. My grandfather used to have his favorite places that we would eat at Disneyland. I'm still pushing that into my next generation, my children. And so I think there's a lot of that probably happening for a lot of people who might be listening. You know, food is a big part of what they pass on to their families, especially when visiting these parks and making that part of their memory making. But one thing that you just reminded me of that I really love, you know, there's the meat kebabs across from the
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
talking about the ones that are across from
The Jungle Cruise.
the Jungle Cruise.
Yeah.
You know, I have to every time I go. In fact, I'm going to Disneyland next week with IAPA, and that's the first thing I thought of is I got to make sure I get a taste of those because they
They're
do
so
so
good.
well at doing that, and it's just, but only there can you get that, right?
Right. It's not even at any of the other Disney parks. And just to like de-Disneyfy it for a second, so we're not only
Sure,
talking about
sure.
Disney, kind of Dollywood has kind of the same thing with their cinnamon bread. You know,
Yes.
for people who haven't been there, if you've ever had an Auntie Annie's cinnamon pretzel, it's like that, but in a loaf. It's so
Wow.
simple. It's not complicated at all. It's very home style, but people line up at the grist mill, which is where they make it fresh, just to get this cinnamon bread. It does get people in the door. It's a gate driver. People go to get the fresh made cinnamon bread because you can only get the fresh made cinnamon bread at Dollywood. So it's something as simple as that, just making one thing and making it really, really well. It then becomes part of the park's ethos. It just becomes part of the decision-making process for the guest. If I'm going to go to this park and I can only get this thing there, and I know it's really, really good, then that can be the difference in a season pass holder versus a single visit.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, you know, what are some of the surprising ways that you found that food enhances the guest satisfaction just beyond the taste?
The biggest one is nostalgia. I think people grow up going to certain parks, and then when they bring their kids, if something doesn't have to be exactly the same, but just a continuation of what they know from growing up, when they're able to share that with their kids, that just creates a new memory that creates, you know, generational fans
Yes.
who want to keep coming back. And beyond the nostalgia factor, which is, you know, kind of hard to grasp, it's a continuation of the theme of the park, and it keeps you in the moment. It keeps you in that kind of happy-go-lucky, you know, protected from the outside world feeling of being in the park. And food is really very simple. We make it very overcomplicated, you know, with the popularity of shows like Chef's Table about 10 years ago and people wanting to be in the Michelin Guide. You know, food doesn't have to be complicated. The best food I've had around the world has been from mom and pop shops who serve one thing. And I literally, when we were in Vietnam, we went to the same stall 3 times because the food was so good. They only served one thing. And it was excellent. And that's all you need to have that repeat business and to build that brand loyalty. And
I love that. I love that because you're right. And I love what you said, generational fans, right? Like that's what we want in this industry. We want to be able to continue to have those experiences with our family and pass that along. And my kids don't know my grandpa. So, you know, when I take him there, I'm like, this was his favorite. And you can share that with them as time goes by. And, you know, speaking of food and just, you mentioned this one place in Shanghai that you ate at 3 times because they had done what they did, that one thing very, very well, which is, you're right, very simple, but it's authentic. And, you know, it kind of takes me to my next questions for you, which are about authenticity, automation, and innovation in the food space. And you've mentioned in some of our conversations prior that authenticity is as a trend in food. And what does that look like for food and beverage operators?
It kind of goes back to that idea of intentionality, just making sure that there's a reason for things. You know, if you're just checking the boxes to make sure people are fed, that's fine. That's great. But to take it to the next level, there needs to be a reason why. You know, we want you to experience this thing because it's special to our region or it's special to our park. And we want you to be part of that. And kind of circling back to where we started, breaking bread is like one of the oldest traditions in hospitality. Breaking bread with somebody is how you show someone that you are welcome here. And when you invite someone into your park, you're inviting them into your home. And when you feed them, you're inviting them to break bread in your home. So if you approach food that way, as opposed to purely just a line item on a sheet where you're trying to cost cut, which I get in this day and age with inflation, it's hard. Food prices are crazy. But just being intentional about those decisions can make a huge difference. And it comes across as authentic and genuine as opposed to just transactional.
Yes.
And that's how technology can help. It's in the exact same way, is making sure that it's intentional and not just transactional. Because anybody who's gotten coffee in the past 2-3 years is going to feel rage when I say iPad tipping. Like, that just feels so disingenuous to me. Like, I would rather leave $1 in a tip jar than tap the buttons that I feel like I'm required to tap because they're facing me. So when you go to a theme park, people expect a level of technological integration. For example, going back to Disney, just because they are so large, the way that they handle their quick service now, there's a lot more mobile ordering options. And that can be a really great way to just streamline the process. And then you still have a cast member who is handing you your food and saying, like, please enjoy, have a great day. So you still get the personal touch, but you're not having to wait in a line. You're not having to stand in the heat with your crying kids trying to get a Dole Whip. You can order it, walk over, get it. It's very pleasant, and then you're done. That's a perfect way to integrate technology. But when it comes to kind of that full service experience where people are paying more to sit down and have a meal, there's a place for technology, like using an iPad instead of a physical ordering, sheet. Great, like make it quicker for the kitchen. But those high touch situations should still have an element of hospitality. You should still have a host. You should still have, well-trained servers who are anticipating guest needs. And that will also inspire people to want to come back. They will continue to spend the money on the nicer experience when they feel like they're being genuinely taken care of. So that way you're still streamlining both processes, but in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I fully am in agreement with you. I think that we thought that food kiosks and we've offered food kiosks and mobile ordering for quite a while, and probably even before its time. We really didn't see a lot of it getting adopted until after the pandemic, which I'm glad that it got adopted, because in those situations where it's not high touch, if you got three hangry kids, I've got 3 kids. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a water park and we just waited too long to feed them. They're hangry and I'm in line for an hour. So, I love that those options exist. But on the flip side, I was just at an event last week and Martha Stewart came to speak to us. I mean, talk about food.
Right.
She came to speak to us, first of all, talking about an amazing marketer when it comes to food. I mean, she legit brought martinis, like from her restaurant, with the 3, espresso martinis. And she invited most of us that were there to her restaurant at the Paris. I wish I could think of the name right now. I feel silly that I cannot remember, because it was an experience. But to your point of what you're saying, though, here we knew we were going to spend somewhere. I mean, we got the tomahawk steak for 2, which was $300. You wouldn't want to be ordering on an iPad with that, right? Like,
No.
that you can't have that. I mean, they brought the tomahawk out to the table. They sliced it right in front of you. It was an experience. That's the probably the biggest reason why the cost is the way that it is, because they created this entire experience around this steak. Right? I think the other thing that you've communicated that I just want to reiterate to the audience is also the value, right? The hospitality around the eating experience is a big part of the value creation and why people will spend those extra few dollars on a steak. Because I'm sure if I cooked a steak at home, I could have saved some money, right? But I
Mhm.
wanted to have that experience that Martha told us about. And I have to tell you, it was an amazing experience. I mean, I'm sure anything she cooked or that comes from Martha is amazing, right?
Right.
But it's the same thing that we see in theme parks. I mean, this is Las Vegas. People are going there to have these experiences. They're going there to get something that they're not going to find anywhere else.
And sometimes you just want to be pampered. You want to have someone slice your meat for you, and or if it's a multi-course menu, I don't have to order anything. It just comes to me like that. You know, do you pay for that every single time you go? No, but you will splurge on it because it's an experience, like you said. Like it's part of the larger, you know, goal of just like feeling good about yourself.
Well, and it's just fun. It's not just eating. There's a conversation. There's a conversation with the guy who is cutting, the butcher that came out and cut the meat in front of us. I don't know if he was technically a butcher, but he comes out and he cuts up the steak for you, and you're having a conversation with him, and that's part of the memory. That's part of the imprint that you have. I mean, would I recommend anybody go out to Martha Stewart's restaurant in the Paris? Yes, it was amazing. But this is what we want to see in our parks too. We want people to be able to go home. And I think it's Hershon that has the saying that in their food and beverage that they should be creating foods that are memorable enough to repeat.
Yeah,
Like
creating memories worth repeating.
worth repeating,
Their
yes. And I
tagline,
love
yes.
that. Because I think if all attractions kind of adopted something similar in terms of that mindset around food, we would have better options of food in many of these parks. And if you don't mind, I do have more questions for you. I know
Yeah,
we're okay,
absolutely.
cool. So, one of the things that you've mentioned in your work is guest experience lessons from going to global parks. And based on your blog about about what Hong Kong and Disneyland, what lessons can smaller attractions learn from global parks in terms of food and beverage and hospitality?
So this is kind of a general hospitality statement, but for smaller parks, your size is your strength. You know, Hong Kong Disneyland is the smallest of Disney's parks, but they're still staffed like a Disney park. So you felt taken care of when you were there. Like they really didn't have to utilize mobile ordering because they had enough staff members at every kiosk. And when it's not needed because of crowds, you don't miss mobile ordering. It is kind of nice to walk up, even if you don't speak the same language, because again, we were, the other side of the world. You can point, the person hands it to you, they smile. It's a very pleasant interaction. You go off on your way, and you're, eating this, popsicle surrounded by mountains in the middle of Hong Kong, and it's just a very pleasant experience. And I think smaller parks can kind of get caught up in wanting to be a Disney, wanting to be a Universal. And there's a strength in being a smaller, more hospitable park. And just taking the time to anticipate guest needs and being able to give a higher touch experience is not something to sneeze at.
Yeah.
A lot of larger parks just can't do that. They just don't have the manpower. They don't have the time. And being able to show that extra level of hospitality can make a huge difference, regardless of what you're serving on the menu.
No, I think it's so true. I think that like the biggest part of the food experience, even though we have this technology, like you said, you don't need it necessarily because it is going to make the difference for the guest in having those conversations. Like you got to experience in Hong Kong their culture or their people. And I would say even like at Martha Stewart's restaurant before we spent the money and bought the tomahawk steak, which was like what she recommended. So I mean, I don't typically make a habit of going out and spending money on a steak like that, but she recommended it, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do it what she says. But part of that experience is the conversation around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conversation that you have with those that are serving you when you're working or visiting these parks or having these food experiences. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing an example of when food helped turn around an average attraction or a small attraction, as you mentioned, into a standout memory.
So actually, we're going to pivot to Shanghai Disneyland now for a second. So that park is very large and very crowded. And one of their newest areas is a Zootopia themed land, which if no one has seen the movie, it's a movie about kind of anthropomorphic animals. There's a cop bunny and a fox who have to work together. It's just kind of a fun world where there's just animals working in normal a normal setting. And it gets very crowded because it's very popular and it's not very big. So we were kind of a little put off by it. We weren't loving it. But outside that area, they sell these popsicles, P-A-W, popsicles, which are in the movie. They're just little popsicles shaped like paws. And, that's all they sell at these little kiosks. So they're running through real quick. The line moves fast. And as soon as we got that and then walked back through the land, we were like transported into the movie. And it was like the people around us disappeared. So I was like, this is literally, I saw this in the movie and I saw that building in the movie and I saw these characters. Like I just stepped into the movie and it was so cool. It just changed our whole attitude. And the flavor was also really interesting. It was like a local berry it wasn't like a raspberry. It was some kind of red berry. I don't remember what it was. But, so we got the kind of local taste with this kind of well-known movie, and it just really changed it for us and made it a better experience than what it could have been.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is so smart because there's probably many times where food could turn around an experience for people who are visiting our parks and attractions.
Especially like if you're hangry, you're not going to have a good time. And if you have something satisfying, that's going to turn your whole day around, whether you're at a theme park or at home.
Right. Well, and like we mentioned, food is a big part of like our imprinting, our memory making. I know smells are. That's why they're pumping the smells out oftentimes of some of the restaurants, which I think is so clever. They're also pumping smells out in the rides, right? So that you imprint the experience, because that's part of how our brain indexes memories, right? And I think that's something that I really love about what you're saying today is that if you want to create a memorable experience, food is a huge part of that. It's not just about feeding the people who are visiting your attraction. If you're a small attraction, you have an opportunity to create something really unique, maybe even pivot faster than some of these larger parks would be able to in order to provide those kind of experiences. Well, I know that you are somebody who you're a content creator. You have a lot of industry insights with your experience of visiting parks and being a foodie, a fellow foodie. I love that because I like to taste the food wherever I go as well. I think there's something really cool about that. And it's a quick and easy way to get to know where you are. But as somebody who covers food and hospitality trends, what do you think are some of the next big shifts we're going to see in theme park dining and attraction dining?
I think we're going to start moving towards more immersive experiences with dining. Anybody who's been following the opening of Universal's Epic Universe has probably heard about the steakhouse that's going to be in the Dark Universe area of the park, which is the classic monster themed area. And it's a steakhouse, and that in a theme park seems kind of weird, but it's getting a ton of hype because of the theming. It's inside of a building that's capped with a vintage windmill that catches fire every couple minutes, a la the movie Frankenstein. And all of the food inside is themed to these classic monsters, and it's, bloody, kind of stuff. And it's getting really good reviews because it's intentional and it's supposedly done well. Because again, I have not tried it. I have not been. The park doesn't open until I think Memorial Day. But I think parks, even in the cost-cutting era, are starting to realize that when you put the thought and the theming into these experiences and the food, people will come and they will spend the money and they will tell their friends.
Yes, I completely agree. In fact, I feel bad because I have to mention this restaurant of Martha's. I'm gonna look it up real quick while we're talking.
She deserves it.
The Bedford. And,
Okay.
just to your point, when we walked into this restaurant, you felt like you were walking into Martha's house. And I don't even think that took I mean, it was beautiful because it's in the Paris, but at the same time, to what you're saying, they've got this theming with the ultimate villains or the dark area that's going to be there. You have a steakhouse. People are going to be spending more than they would if they were just to visit, you know, Texas Roadhouse, right? Not that that isn't an experience, because
They've got great theming there too.
they've got the great theming. Their rolls are unique to them, like the bread that you have at the table. The bread at Martha's place was amazing. I want you to go visit this because it was,
I'm gonna have to now.
especially with like knowing that you like food, just like I do. Like and that's the way to my heart, right? Like I don't care if you're an attraction, if you've got good food, and probably like when I go to Disney, one of my favorite experiences is the food, right? It's just
Right.
sure, I love the rides, but I also love the food. I love the experiences. I think that that's a big part of it for a lot of guests. And if I'm just going off of my own experience and what you've said today, I think that a lot of people feel the same way about that. But yeah, so it's the Bedford at the Paris. It was amazing. But just to your point, they can take an opportunity to create an experience. They create more value. They can create more revenue because it's a big part of the big part of the audience that's listening are people who are owning it, who own and operate attractions, and many of them are looking for how do I create more value for my guests. And we talked a little bit about this when we were just before we got on the show, but I think a lot of hospitality has been lost since the pandemic. And I know this isn't part of the questions, but I'm just curious because I'm curious what you think about this because I know that one of the reasons that I started this show was just to provide information, especially because during the year of 2020, we lost a lot of legacy knowledge in our industry because if you were a park that was shut down in 2020, you likely didn't reopen until 2021 in many parts of the country and the world. And in fact, in Canada, it took 2 years. So those people had to go find other roles, and many of them didn't make their way back. And what we saw at Gatemaster was a shift to a younger generation of team, which has been great because you have the creativity, you have like a whole other set of ideas. But what they didn't have were those old legacy pieces that you see in traditions of hospitality. Do you see that changing? And from visiting around the world, do you feel like that's coming back?
I do believe that it's coming back. I think people, especially content creators and influencers, the people who are affecting the market very quickly, are tired of that lack of hospitality. And after 4 or 5 years of that, are starting to call it out a lot more. And I think the properties are starting to listen. I will say, I started working for Hershon in 2021, Hershon Family Entertainment. And if there's a company that has that legacy knowledge still intact, it's them, because there are people who work at Silver Dollar City and Dollywood who've been there since day one, and they're passing that knowledge on to people. And that, to your point, is priceless.
Yeah.
That knowledge is important. But on the flip side, outside of the theme park realm, if you look at a place like Chick-fil-A, I'm from the South, I'm at Chick-fil-A once a week. But every company I've ever worked for, they've always been like, man, I really wish we could just like hire Chick-fil-A to come in and do like a hospitality seminar, because they are so nice. It's very, very genuine. Every time you place your order, you say, have a blessed day. Like it's so Southern, but it's just so sweet. And the hospitality is just part of their DNA. And I think that is something that can come back. I think especially as it affects the bottom line, because people have started to lose patience with this kind of low touch, high volume. We just want, to get the single day tickets. We don't really care about the pass holders. This is speaking from my experience with Disney. This is not about smaller parks, of course, but that's the kind of attitude that's been going around the past couple of years, and people are tired of it. And they're going to start gravitating towards the regional parks that are giving a more hospitable environment. Those parks like the Dollywoods and the Silver Dollar Cities and the Knott's Berry Farms, like they're going to start going back to those because they're also less expensive. And you're getting You're gonna get a better value proposition.
I mean, I love Silver Dolly steak. For what I was just there last year, and what you're saying is 100% true. You go there, you feel the love, right? You feel the love that they have for each other, the training that they've given each other, the understanding of the guest experience and what they're trying to create for people, the hospitality piece. I think they're a great example. I'm so glad that you mentioned them, and Knott's Berry Farm as well. I'm actually excited to go see them next week as well, because of those reasons, right? I mean, and they started in food with the chicken dinners and that experience. So it makes sense that that would be something that's unique to them and that they really understand that value proposition of having great food and great service. I also I think it's just very interesting to hear you say that the public is going to start demanding this, because I don't disagree. There's nothing worse than spending a fortune, and I say fortune because it is an investment for people to visit these parks. I don't care if you're going as an individual or you're going as a family of 5.
Mm-hmm.
It is still a personal investment in these parks, and you want to come away with a great experience. And I believe 100% that food and beverage is a big part of that. And I hope that those listening understand some of these takeaways, but I'm hoping maybe you can share just one practical takeaway that can elevate somebody's food and beverage experience today if they're listening and they decide to implement this.
So what I would say is, going back to authenticity, if you want to revamp your food and bev, pick one signature and then do it really, really well. Perfect it to the point that this is what people are going to come to your park for, because that also streamlines efficiency and it gives you a differentiator. For example, Dollywood has their cinnamon bread. Universal Studios has butterbeer. Knott's Berry Farm's boysenberry, everything. You make one thing that draws people in, and then that again can be that deciding factor of like, well, should we go to the park? Should we not go to the park? It's like, well, we could only get this thing if we go to the park. So yeah, let's go ahead and go since we're here. And then you have ticket sales that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
It all affects the other. And you mentioned Chick-fil-A. I just wanted to bring this up here on this because we do have a lot of operators who are listening. And I read a thing about, how they say my pleasure whenever somebody says thank you. And it took them 6 years to roll that out. And the reason I'm bringing that up, because I know some people in the audience listening are like, how do I do this? It seems like so much work. You got to have patience. It's going to take small steps, like you're saying. Just focus on one thing and move it into the reality of change. And that's really the change agent right there, is just focusing on that one thing. But when I heard that story about how long it took Chick-fil-A to implement that across all their restaurants, it makes you realize that this is not something that you can necessarily do overnight. It's just something that you have to chip away at.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My mom used to tell me when I would get overwhelmed, she said, imagine a bundle of sticks. Like, you can't break the whole thing at once, but if you break one at a time, all of a sudden you've broken all the sticks in half.
Yeah.
So just focus on one step at a time, consistently, and then you get there, which sounds so simple. It is more complicated than that, but at the end of the day, it's just putting one foot in front of the other.
It is. It's just a matter of doing it. And let me ask you, Sarah, I really appreciate you coming, sharing your insights. I appreciate what you're doing, going out into the world and sharing these ideas, sharing what these experiences are like for people who can't visit these parks, but want to emulate some of what you're seeing that's successful. Where can the audience find you if they would like to see your blog or any of the content that you're creating? What's the best way?
Absolutely. So I am on all the socials at Sarah B Travelin'. Travelin', not traveling. And I also have my website, Sarah B Travelin', where I post my insights, my thoughts, my stories that don't have a home. And then you can also find my bylines in Forbes Travel Guide and Eater Atlanta and Tasting Table, like you said, mostly revolving around food, but a lot of travel as well.
So before I let you go, what's the one place you would say that we got to go?
Oh my gosh.
From where you've been. If you had to pick one, what's the one place?
I'm going to say for foodies, you have to go to Taipei to go to the night markets.
Okay.
It's Low
That
stress,
question was for
no
me.
reservations. You can go whenever. It's so fun. It's just a great environment, lots of great food. It's a good time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your travels, your information with the audience. I just really appreciate guests like you who take the time to be here. And thank you for being so generous with that time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've had a great conversation, great time. I'm happy I've been able to share.
Thank you. Appreciate you. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that show as much as I do. We've talked about food and experiences quite a lot on this show, and I really appreciate Sarah for coming on here and giving a whole other perspective, maybe even a worldview perspective of what it's like to visit attractions across the world and have these different experiences. But also, I just, there's so much that I'm digesting from this conversation, and I think a lot of it has to do with how much the food impacts the guest experience and the things that you might be able to do to improve that in your facilities, your attractions, or your parks. So if you are watching today, I hope that you'll leave me and Sarah a note. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you're doing in your parks and attractions to make that food experience a big part of the journey of your guests. So I appreciate you being here today. I'm Sondra Shannon. I'm signing off for the day, and we'll see you next week for the next episode of Live with Sondra. Hope you have a great rest of your week.